You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the Arpa podcast. Okay, so welcome back to the first episode of the Arpa podcast after our little summer break. Joining me in studio, of course, is Maria.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
So, are you all settled back in, refreshed?
Yes, refreshed. It's hard to get back to work, but we're very keen on keeping on going with Arpa activities.
Exactly, and we also have fancy Arpa branded paper, do we not?
We do, for all our exercises.
And is there anything else in the pipeline, marketing-wise? T-shirts, underpants, lunch boxes?
Well, anything that you need, basically.
Okay, well, and
Arpa provides.
Arpa provides.
Yes.
Even spiritual fulfillment.
Especially spiritual fulfillment.
Okay, well, in our last podcast before the summer break, we were talking about the beach. You can check that episode out online. It has proved to be a popular one. The listening charts and download charts are off the hook, off the chain. And it featured a character who was straddling two different civilizations. And we have a little bit of that today as well with Brian Friel's translations, I should say, a play he wrote back in the 80s with a well-known actor now, Stephen Ray. And we'll be talking about that after the break, getting a considered opinion of our expert in studio of all things Irish, all things artistic, and all things Brian Friel.
Yourself.
And you, of course, as well. So, like always, the more things change, the more things stay the same. We'll be with you after this musical interlude. So here we are at the meat and potato section of the podcast. This is where we earn our bread and butter, and that's how we afford fancy microphones, paper with our logo on it, and beers that we're sipping out of right at this moment. What are you drinking?
Mosto.
What is that?
Grape juice.
Grape juice?
Yes.
Wow.
And it's very much of a local thing for some parts of Spain because I've been called a northern and I went northern in that down south.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to rush off to the bathroom in the middle of the show. It's a diuretic, isn't it, grapefruit?
No, well, I'm used to it. Been drinking it since I was little, so
okay, you've
I'm
hard
sure
up.
I can, hold
okay,
on.
you've a strong control of that bladder. You'll yes. Moving on from all things bladder and grapefruit related,
Yes,
we're going to be discussing the great work Translations by Brian Friel, which a play you introduced to me, did you not?
I did indeed. I just can't believe you didn't know it before.
Oh, I knew it.
But
I didn't read it, yeah. So you were looking for an Irish play for a while, in general, no? Not specifically this one, but an Irish play in general.
No, because I just have got more than enough with your plays. I find them completely amazing. So no, I wasn't looking for one, but it just sort of like jumped out of the shelf when I was in the bookshop.
Yeah.
So somehow I thought I had to read it.
Yeah, it says in the cover set text, so must be on the A levels or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that kind of put me off a bit, but well.
It's strange. I'm not sure why it's on a state exam over there, to be honest with you. But you read it. You enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it very much.
You enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
Did you have any preconceptions before you opened the pages?
No, I didn't, because actually I had no idea. I mean, what sort of like side of the argument, to put it that way, was going to to be about. So I was a little bit nervous about that.
Well, you knew from the description of the play at the back that is a play about British soldiers in Ireland in the 1890s, I think.
Yes, that's right.
And their job is to change the local place names into English, to anglicise the town and the community. So knowing that before you started, well, were you aware of this as a thing in Irish history, or are you aware of this as something that has happened in other colonised countries? Is it a thing that you're aware of as a topic?
No, well, sort of like kind of historically, it's probably sort of like names of places are a big tool for like propaganda and certainly for like colonialism and so on.
Yeah.
But normally there's sort of like a will to kind of like, I don't know, change the name and leave no trace of the former name. That's usually the trend. And here it was kind of like a random exercise of leaving the names of places. It was more sort of like achieving kind of like standardized names rather than, and then adapting them to words that sounded the same in English even if they didn't have the same meaning, which sort of like, led to really absurd name changes. So that was like quite peculiar, and to be honest I was quite attracted to that because obviously we're into like language things, and I thought that was gonna be interesting to see like what part that played.
Yeah, and also a play that happens over the course of 3 days, or a few days anyway, a handful of days.
Yeah,
which
pretty much.
well, yeah, and it's a story that happens kind of quite locally and over that short time period, but it speaks also in a national level and about the story of Ireland over a longer period of time as well. So you have this inherent duality or opposing forces in the play. Do you think you're motivated to read more plays by Brian Friel? Basically, are you impressed with his technique and his skill at maybe layering different ideas and having these opposing forces at play within the text?
Yeah, I thought it was very, very well written. I hadn't really read anything like that before. I must admit I find it a little bit difficult, mainly because of the linguistic things, because one of the things that we have to...
It's not Twilight anyway.
No, but one of the things that we have to like point out is that the play should be in Irish, really.
Yeah.
And then what is being done is basically he's written it in English, and then sometimes people speak in Irish.
Yeah. Well, most of the time they speak in Irish.
Most of the time they speak in Irish, but you don't. It's not made obvious. But you just have to understand from the text.
The default language in the text is Irish.
Yeah.
Which is the curious thing about this play is that even though it's a work of fiction and it's not and it's dealing with fictional characters, but obviously with real events. But the consequences of it happened in the 1890s. We got our independence in 1921, so there's still a lot of history there to happen between those 2 points, and the fact that we are speaking English right now, that I'm speaking English, and the fact that a lot of times that play is performed in English shows in a very real way, and the fact that the play was probably written in English as well shows in a very real way that the Anglicization of the language, if not the identity, as told in the play, had something of a success, because the Irish culture in terms of the language isn't as popular or as vibrant as it could be. So that's an interesting element of the play as well.
Yeah. No, I think the thing about the play is that there are so many dimensions. There's obviously a political one, which is kind of like the main one, and I believe you're going to talk to us about that because you're far more, more of an expert in the topic. But I think it's good that it also leads with like some universal subjects that tend to. I think that theatre often, deals with, which are, identity and kind of like the sense of history and the meaning of history.
Yeah, well, I'm interested to read more of his stuff because he's famous for Dancing in Lunasa, which was a movie as well with Meryl Streep, if I'm not mistaken. And there's also, seemingly there's a motif in his work of dead babies or orphan babies or babies born out of wedlock. So if I read more of his work, that reference to the baby in the play might make more sense. But what we can do now is take a look at the play in detail and really deconstruct it intellectually.
And then construct it back again.
If we have time. So yeah, now you're familiar with what the story is. There's a head school in the play, run by a guy called Manus and his father Hugh, and the British soldiers are in town because they're trying to anglicise that part of the country, make a map, and change all the place names into English. And we see the reactions and the consequences of this action, and the reaction of the different characters to it. So, would you like to start with your interpretation, or shall I take the lead in this one?
Well, I think what sort of like becomes apparent to anybody, if you know a little bit of Irish history, is that the different characters sort of like portray different attitudes towards colonialism.
Only one character in the play, has to be said, of the Irish lot could be considered pro colonialism, and the others are more accommodating of it for different reasons. But then at the end of the play, that changes. I want to mention two analysis of it that I've seen online, which woefully got it wrong. One analysis mentioned that the character of Manus, who's a big nationalist and is limp, was some kind of Gaelic chauvinist, and the other analysis kind of goes along that road as well. I think to understand the play, we have to set something out straight away. And by straight away, after all the preamble of the introduction and all the 5 minutes or whatever of the talking that we've done, or 8 minutes even, we've done the second part of the show. But now I mean straight away in this moment that this is fundamentally a nationalist play, and to view the characters who are nationalists, who are pro-Irish, or who are concerned with the loss of their language, to see those guys as the villains of the piece, as it were, would be to really misunderstand the intentions of the writer and the kind of historical milieu. Because one analysis I read saw the characters are more of a hybrid as the kind of heroic figures, which I think is a very imperialistic and very empire-centered view of it, and I think it's inherently wrong. So we'll take this. So for the respect of this podcast, we're going to take it from the view that the presence of the British in the country was well, obviously wrong. I'm not going to make any apologies for thinking that, but also as well the action that they're undertaking, which seemingly seems insignificant, was part of a wider kind of cultural destruction, and that was actually quite a violent thing. And taking as our stepping stone and as our context for analysing the play, we can begin our kind of deconstruction of it. So I'll start along those lines. I think it's a play of powerlessness, because a lot of I think it's a very good examination of the dynamic between the colonised country and the colonising force, and the dynamics at play with the people in that situation, and also it's a comment on people's personal motivations and their kind of motivations at a national level, at a kind of wider, bigger level, and that delicate balance between those two influences the actions of the different characters. We've a whole host of characters. We look at Owen, for example. As you remember from the play, he was initially kind of pro-British. He was working for the army, but we realised that he just wanted a way out of his kind of boring life in the back and beyond and the countryside of Ireland, and that was kind of his overriding factor. But he still retained a sense of Irishness through his love of the place names. And it was kind of more an individual. It was more individualistic view of history, which kind of suited like his perhaps perspective, that he just wanted to make his own way, and he didn't feel kind of belonging to a greater movement. Not in the first half of the play anyway, at least. Would you agree?
Yeah, well, I think he sort of like what I grasped as a non-Irish person was more of of a stereotype, but a typical person who's basically moved away from the countryside and is, has acquired sort of like education elsewhere, and for that reason he sort of like feels, more in a position to...
Yeah, and he comes back, and his father as well, him and his father are very condescending towards the local townspeople, and it seems at the start as well the education is not so important, even though they own the school, because he comes late, he's drunk, and he kind of dismisses them straight away, and when the British soldiers come in, he kind of cleans up the place. But then he's very disparaging, the father is, of the British later on in the play. And Owen as well is like talking about these kind of simple folk and how we have to bring, kind of modernise the place, and how the British action of changing the place names is going to do that. And of course, we've other characters in the play. Manus is an interesting character. He's limp, and I think his limpness is to represent the kind of the limping effect of the country. Manus is limp, he's a nationalist, and I think why it's a counter in porosness, because at the end of the play we're left with the two characters who are the oldest in the piece, you know, and these guys they tried to rebel against the British in 1798, but they couldn't do it, and they felt a sense of homesickness, which I feel represents kind of a homesickness for a lost Ireland, or an Ireland that they want to have back. They want to reclaim the Ireland that they don't have anymore, which is an independent nation. And Manus, his character, with the arrival of the English and with the solidifying of the Anglicization and the changing of the names, he eventually leaves stage left and goes to another part of the country, leaves the play, and he's a character as well who's very fixed in what he wants and what he believes in as well, unlike some of the other characters who are perhaps more accommodating of what's happening and who are more unsure of what they're doing. And then Duality, he's kind of a simpleton but a good-hearted lad. Also at the end of the play, he rushes off to kind of find the two brothers who are hinted at throughout the play to fight the English. And why does he want to do that? Because at the end of the play, the British threaten violence upon the village because one of the British soldiers has gone missing for whatever reason, and we're not sure if there's foul play at hand. And I think this is where things come to a head, because even though the changing of culture and the trying to annihilate a language is a very violent action, it doesn't have the effect of physical violence because it's very subtle, and that's why some people can kind of have an accommodation with it. But then when you see that manifest of violence intimated by the British soldier, when they're basically saying, if you don't do this, we're going to act and react very violently, then it can kind of really put into perspective what's actually happening in the country, and can kind of reorientate some of the characters who are more in the middle or accommodating and push them towards one extreme or the other. I don't extreme in a negative sense, but I mean to one side or the other. And that's what happened towards the end of the play. The characters who are kind of in the middle become more nationalist and become more protective of the culture, and they leave the stage, because fundamentally the scenes of the play are full of people who are kind of weak or kind of powerless or feel powerless, and the characters who realise their own powerfulness eventually end up leaving the stage and aren't present at the end. And I think that's a commentary on how, as a country, we have to get our independence and have to get our respect and identity through recovering our culture and recovering the land, which where the British soldier comes into play as well, because he's a character who didn't want to be a soldier. He missed the boat to India. He didn't want to go home to his father, who's very controlling, so he joined the army. And even though he loves Ireland and he loves the place names, fundamentally he's still doing a bad thing that he shouldn't be doing, and he shouldn't be in the country. And the Irish girl falls in love with him. Well, she's been colonised in the mind because her mother has told her that English is the way forward, and she probably sees English as the modern thing. So she's a bit of a victim of colonisation in that sense, that she thinks she looks down on her own people. Sarah, the young girl, she's also another interesting character because she's practically dumb. She doesn't speak very often, but she does speak when Manus the nationalist helps her to start the play. But when the British later in the play try to shout at her and ask her, "What's your name?" She doesn't respond because she can't, because she's too scared. I think that's a symbolism of Ireland not being able to express itself or communicate because it's been shackled by colonisation. But when it's been held by the nationalists, by the person who understands the country, it flowers and it can speak. And then going back to Hugh, the father of Manus and Owen, he's an interesting character because he's accommodating in another sense. He believes that even if we speak the same language, we're not going to understand each other, we're going to be different people. And he makes reference to that as well, that even though we can speak the same language, that language is grafted on our own personal experiences, our own soul, and our own way of viewing the world and our other influences. And that's why, he feels that we have to make English our own. We can't find any other solution, but we have to overcome it and adopt it, but make it Irish, make it something our own that they don't have. And that's why I think it's fundamentally a nationalist play, and there's a lot of kind of different things going on. He, even in the place names, there's a scene where Owen is talking about, should we call it this, keep the name of Saint Brendan or whatever, and honour this man who doesn't live anymore and nobody remembers. And I think even at the local level, the national level, the international level, whatever the name becomes, in a sense it doesn't matter. There's a duality there, but also it does matter because whoever the people are interacting with are going to be informed by their own influences and experiences as a people and as a nation, and going to give their own meaning to it, which is distinct from the meaning given to it by a colonising force. So I think, I don't know, it's a real commentary on powerlessness and the kind of power dynamics within between a colony and a colonized country. So I don't know if I missed anything there.
I don't think so. You've given a very thorough review. No, I mean, I would agree. Obviously, there are some bits and pieces which, you know, you have clarified further for me because, you know, I was missing some like contextual backgrounds. But, well, I think it succeeds in kind of like very cleverly showing a situation, you know, by telling it through a specific story, which apparently has no more importance, or, you know, it's kind of like a very simple story with a middle device, you know, where like we haven't really gone into much depth, basically where the Irish woman you were talking about and the English soldier sort of like get together and that kicks things off. So it all seems very simple, but obviously it's not. And no, I just, you know, it does a great commentary on meaning of history, on the relation between language and identity, and the way that influences history too. And yeah, I think, you know, it's got it's a very, very interesting depiction of full situation of a country, but also of other like topics that you know, can be extrapolated to.
Well, yeah, and also as well the fact that the playwright was Irish and writing in English, and we have other famous writers that wrote in English, kind of bears out as well what Hugh the Father was saying. We have to make it our own, which I think we did as a nation. We made the language our own, and it's distinct from other forms of English, not exclusive just to British English, but American English, Indian English, Australian English. But a reason why I said as well, you know, also in the play they're obsessed with Greek and Roman culture, and there seems to be a sense as well, perhaps we're still waiting to rediscover our Gaelic culture, what happens in the 19th century with the Gaelic revival. And I think that's why Sarah, who's the youngest person in the play, is kind of an important figure as well, because she's going to benefit from the actions of the men who are in their 20s or 30s at the time of the play. They're going to rebel, they're obviously going to fail, but they're going to act and try to achieve a free Ireland, which won't happen until 1921, which in the scheme of things isn't that too far away from the time of the play. But it's the young people like her who are going to benefit from those actions, seeing those characters do that, and people like Hugh and the old man, you know, the people who are compromising are going to pass on, and they're not going to influence a new generation of the country as well. So in a way, even though our culture has been robbed to an extent, you know, the inevitable wheel of history and the inevitable drive towards independence is on its course now, and obviously with the historical facts we know what happens afterwards as well. So I think in that sense, you know, as you said, the meaning of history, the meaning of identity, and how in many ways it's impossible to truly kill an identity. You can take the language, you can strip it away and call it a place name or really something else, but, you know, I don't think any of us ever stopped feeling Irish, to be honest with you. And I think, you know, it's a wonderful play. It shows a lot of defiance as well in the face of overwhelming odds, you know. I mean, little old Ireland against the might of the British language and the British Empire, and in many ways, you know, we prevailed. So, but aside from that, all the politicking, fantastic play. I truly recommend it to read it. And if you read any analysis that contradicts what we said today, just ignore it. So, see you later in part 3. Oh, how we laughed. That was funny what you said. Can't repeat it on air though, because it's a little bit blue. So we'll be back next week, as per usual, with the next episode of the podcast. Staring down the barrel of a long, long year. Only September. So much can happen. So many things that we'll be doing, and we'll be keeping informed of all that as well. Of course, if you're struggling to adjust back to your normal routine, hopefully our voices will be able to settle you back into your old habits of before the summer break. So do you have anything else to say, little Maria?
No, just encourage everyone to get on with taking part.
Exactly, and the countdown to the next Olympics has started. So can't wait for that. And well, the countdown for the next World Cup has started with the qualifiers starting this weekend. And what else are we waiting for?
The Champions League.
Actually, we could do a show about that because UEFA are corrupt. The * stars.
What?
Doesn't really work when you do that vocally. Anyway, so yeah, well, this is Enda from the Arpa podcast saying good luck.
And Maria saying good night.
Ciao. You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the Arpa podcast.